There are 7 R6 operators I found who each meet the criteria for one of the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. I'll start with what is considered to be the original and worst of the 7 deadly sins: pride. Pride is defined as believing that one is essentially better than others, failing to acknowledge the accomplishments of others, and excessive admiration of the personal self. The operator who best matches this description of pride is Callie. Callie was given everything as a child when she was born to 2 very rich parents. From her childhood, it was very clear that she had a personality type that was very abrasive, self-fulfilling, and outright self-righteous. Callie always got everything she wanted. Despite all of the money, power, and fame she had at a young age though, when Callie became a little bit older, she was denied entry into a military combat unit due to her being a woman. Her pride and self-worth couldn't handle this, and it led her down a path to make her own military contracting company instead, to spite the country that questioned her ego and her abilities. Now, despite the prideful nature of this point in her life, this actually led to her being super successful. She operates within India and oversees giving military power to the highest bidder, sometimes even negotiating multi-million-dollar deals with other companies and countries, only solidifying her sense of self and her pride even further. This not only shows in her life choices, but in who she is as a person as well. For example, when her and Ash were on the same team competing in the arena along fellow operators, her pride showed the most we've ever seen. Ash had a clear plan that she communicated for Callie in this example, but because Callie wanted to make a flashy play, Callie disobeyed, baiting her teammates for a kill and shooting off a part of Ash's ear in the process, eventually leading to Ash punching her in the face.
I don't know how you do things in the private sector, but we do not use people as bait here!
This is a game, princess, and I just want it for you.
Keep her back! Steady now.
Callie doesn't seem to hide the way that her sin affects her lifestyle and her ability to maintain relationships. The same cannot be said for our next sin, the sin of greed. Greed is defined as an excessive desire for anything, especially wealth. The operator who best matches this description of greed is Flores. Flores might seem like what he's doing is for a good cause, robbing banks from rich people and giving to the poor, but there is a dark, sinister side to him that you might not know. At the start of Flores' story, as we know, Flores was just a man taking care of his sick mother. He would go out of his way to work multiple normal jobs just to be able to do this. When he was bored of that, he eventually moved to the military, not only to make money, but also just to suit his ideals. He was making around the same money as he was making normal jobs. It was just a change of pace for him. It was more fulfilling. When none of that interested him though, he eventually quit everything to do heists and rob banks from rich people. In the words of his own biography, Flores didn't quit his job because he wasn't making enough money or because of any external factors. In his own words, Flores described his attitude towards mundane life being unimpressed and unfulfilled by normal jobs. He didn't have a reason, he just wanted to. So he moved on to robbing to not only fulfill himself, but to also steal from the rich. As described in his bio, Flores is a man of ideals and individualism. Flores is for the people. He's known as a man who steals from the rich to give to the poor out of selflessness and a lack of greed, but that couldn't be further from the truth. When Ash took note of his capabilities and his history in his country, she flew him out to America and interrogated him to help take out local crime lords in Flores' area. Flores, at this point, was a reformed man afterwards. Flores was living in America, where there was more opportunity, and legal opportunity at that. His actions of robbing and stealing also got his mother killed in the process of his doing. So you'd think after that, a man with no greed involved in what he did would have stopped out of guilt, right? Or maybe just out of principle. Well, Flores never stopped, proving that he robbed because he wanted to, because anything else was quote-unquote unfulfilling. Flores, who was under the guise of working a food truck, actually planned heists and carried them out many times while in that food truck while working in America, even after his mother's death. And it was at this point that his talent was recognized and he was picked up by Rainbow. Flores' greed never really lied in the money, however, because like we established earlier, most of the money he stole, he just gave to poor people. Flores' greed, however, lied in his greed for doing heists and robbing in the first place. He enjoyed the thrill of it, the act of it, not necessarily the money that came along with it. Not as straightforward as greed's definition, which is unlike our next operator who matches their sin's description to a T, the sin of wrath. Wrath can be defined as rage, specifically an inordinate and uncontrollable feeling of hatred and anger. The operator who best fits this description is Kavera. Kavera is known for her serious and aggressive personality. This can be traced all the way back to her early childhood. Kavera was born into poverty. She was the 7th of 10 children in her family alone, and also born to a widow. As a little sister to a bunch of predominantly male siblings who were all older than her, Kavera had to fight, be aggressive, and be serious to even be heard in her family environment, doing so much to get noticed and provide for her family that she went as far as robbery to make ends meet. Eventually, she was caught by local police, where they gave her the option to go to juvenile detention or to be an informant in the local area. When she chose to be an informant, this is where the seriousness and aggressiveness of her personality developed. She found out that doing things her way, and not by the book, or the way people told her, was the way that worked most often for her. This, subconsciously, created a rift between her and any authority figure that tried to stand in her way. This created a sense of anger and distrust and wrath between her and any authority figure. Because of this, Kavera naturally is very aggressive towards anybody that is above her or anybody that challenges her way of thinking. This can be shown from the Operator Stadium games, where Kavera gets killed in the simulation and literally starts crashing out over it.
There is no next time, so go. There was now, and we fucked it up.
You need to relax.
It must have been upsetting.
Kavera in Operator on Operator simulations has been shown many times to also be more aggressive and rageful than any other operator in the team, being shown to interrogate people and literally slice their throat afterwards with zero remorse, committing literal war crimes, by the way. Kavera's anger towards authority or criticism and her lack of empathy make her a perfect candidate for the sin of wrath. Constantly displaying that anger will ruin any relationship that it touches, just like our next candidate whose sin ruined their relationships as well, the sin of envy. The sin of envy is defined as the desire to have a quality, possession, or desirable attribute belonging to somebody else. The candidate I chose to represent this sin specifically is actually Dokkaebi. Dokkaebi is a siege operator that isn't jealous of anything material, nor is she specifically envious to any person in particular. Dokkaebi's jealousy and envy is targeted more towards fitting in with the rest of the operators in Rainbow. Her jealousy stems, like most people, from a lack of self-worth and self-image. To show you why, let's go back into her past. Dokkaebi has served in a combat unit, and is technologically actually very smart, so if anything, she's actually a natural for the team. Dokkaebi, unfortunately, just lacks actual combat experience, and when you put her next to Thatcher, for example, a man twice her size with 10 times her experience and age, you can begin to see why. Her envious nature towards the team can be seen by a clip where her and Thatcher go on a mission, she gets scolded, and this further worsens her self-image with respect to Team Rainbow.
Don't worry. Maybe we'll get it right next time.
2 more seconds and we would have had eyes in the room.
If they were already on cameras, that's 2 seconds too slow.
Her envy has also led her to display a fake self-image to make it seem like she not only belongs there, but is confident in her own abilities, often displaying a bravado or an overconfident version of herself just to fit in, when in reality, the people at Rainbow said, and I quote, she would rather be behind her computer, controlling things from where no one can touch her. Recently, however, she started to get into her family's practice of Buddhism, which has actually started to help her come into her own as a person in a non-envious way, to get rid of this haunting sin that she's been going through since she joined Team Rainbow. Me personally, I'm glad Dokkaebi is finally starting to better herself, although the same cannot be said for our next candidate who represents the sin of sloth. Sloth is defined as a reluctance to work or make an effort, also known as laziness. The operator I've chosen to represent this sin is Echo. Now, to be in a high-tier military combat unit, you can't really be that lazy. It takes hard work physically and mentally and emotionally to even get there, so you can't be too lazy. However, in your personal life, you absolutely still can be. Echo was born to 2 very strict and emotionless parents. Echo once joked that a calculator has a higher emotional range than his parents. This is where his sloth started. His non-ability to connect with his parents bled into other relationships as well, where it led him to just be by himself often, and be avoidant of group work. He dislikes building relationships so much that he actually avoided Harry for a while before getting his initial interview done, which is where I got this information in the first place. Echo is not only lazy because of his lack of wanting to work in groups, but also his obsession with wanting to make everything efficient. In his words, efficiency is clever laziness. His own in-game voice line has him saying things like, "I'll just relax here and let yokai do the rest," or "Why do a job when robots do it better?" or "I'm gonna lie down for a bit." There's plenty more of where those came from, but you get the idea by now. Echo's entire in-game character is built around him being lazy and letting his drones do all of the work, the raw definition of sloth. Echo also points out that everybody needs to be able to switch off. They need distractions, something to get their mind off of whatever is bothering them in their life. They need to be able to relax. Something else that I also want to point out about Echo is he has a pretty good sense of humor, but it comes off as rash and abrasive, and if people don't get his jokes, he's too lazy to explain them. In his words, if nobody laughs at the joke or thinks it's funny, it's because they don't get the joke. He's too lazy to build a social construct himself to be able to know exactly what to joke around certain people and make others comfortable. He just is who he is and doesn't ask any questions or try to figure things out any further. Ironically enough, Echo has also said in the past that a restful mind indicates a lack of intelligence, so at least Echo knows what his problem is and is semi-working on mitigating it, but the same cannot be said at all for our next candidate for the sin of lust. Lust can be defined as an over-obsession and overvalue over an object or an idea, often referred to in a sexual manner, although it doesn't have to be sexual. The candidate I've chosen for the sin of lust is Deimos. Deimos isn't controlled by inherent sexual desires as much as he is controlled by the lust of the ideal siege operator and siege team. Let me explain. Deimos has an over-obsession with the ideal military unit. Deimos used to actually be one of the original Rainbow Six members. After a mission where he was supposed to apprehend a terrorist, Deimos realized that this terrorist was going to get jailed, be released, and kill more innocent lives. To him, this mission would be all for nothing if they were just going to jail him and he was going to go back out and do the exact same thing. The entire point of his mission was to stop terrorists, to neutralize their target, to protect innocent lives. That's what he joined up for. This mission, again, would all be for nothing, so in his eyes, this person, this terrorist, would be better off dead. And in that moment, he made a split decision to just kill the terrorist and disobey orders, never being seen by Rainbow again after that. He wanted Rainbow to be a team of counter-terrorists that killed in a fair and just way, being judge, jury, and executioner, with no control by foreign policy or government on who or who not they were allowed to kill, saving the most amount of innocent lives in the process, or at least what Deimos thought. Deimos, because of this, became obsessed with the perfect counter-terrorist team, lusting at the idea so much of it that he decided to make an organization of his own. When he saw the new Rainbow, full of people he thought to be soft and inexperienced, he saw exactly what he hated. He saw exactly the opposite of his ideals and what he thought killed innocent people. He hated the control that Rainbow was under. He hated the softness and the lack of courage to kill. He hated the people who were weak were serving the unit. He hated Rainbow Six Siege, and to him, because it disgraced his old unit and his ideals, he thought of Rainbow Six Siege as the enemy, the counter to his ideals. His lust for this image in his head of the perfect operator, the perfect unit, the perfect ideal, the most amount of civilians saved, runs him into a mental wall to this day, making Deimos become the very thing he swore to destroy. His over-obsession and over-value over what he wants and what he desires, which is, by the way, the definition of lust, drove him away from who he was and brought him to who he is today.
Now, if you don't mind, I happen to find you exceedingly fucking boring.
Yeah, well, don't tell me when I was swinging.
Now, the sin of lust on Deimos you might not have seen coming, which is fair. But I guarantee you probably know exactly who this next operator is for the sin of gluttony. Gluttony is defined as the overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of waste. The operator that best fits this description is Gridlock. This description being the only thing that Gridlock can actually fit into. Now, jokes aside, let's actually address the elephant in the room. Her name is Gridlock. And my name's Alka. Check out this next video, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.